The ground shook so hard that Ben Foster thought his teeth might crack. He was too old for this. 58 years of living, and here he was again, running through smoke and fire while death rained from the sky. The mining tunnels of Redstone Colony stretched before him, dark and narrow. Behind him, 23 civilians stumbled through the darkness, coughing and crying. Ben had retired from military service 5 years ago. He came to this distant colony world to find peace. He wanted quiet days checking ore deposits and watching sunsets that painted the red rocks orange and gold. The universe had other plans. The Halian ships appeared 3 hours ago. No warning. No demands. Just destruction. Their energy weapons turned the colony's main settlement into glass and ash in minutes. Ben had been in the eastern mines when the attack started. He gathered everyone he could find and headed deeper underground. Now the tunnel walls cracked with each explosion above. Dust rained down on their heads. A young woman named Rita carried her daughter. An old man called Davis limped on a twisted ankle. Ben knew some would not make it to the deep shelters. He had seen this before in 2 other wars, but he kept moving, kept pushing them forward. They turned a corner into a wider chamber. This place was old, carved out decades ago when the first miners arrived. Strange rock formations rose from the floor like frozen waves. The air here felt different, warmer. Ben raised his hand to stop the group. Something glowed in the corner of the chamber. At first, Ben thought it was just heated rock from the bombing. Then he saw its shape. It was not natural. The object stood about 3 feet tall, smooth and crystalline. Colors moved beneath its surface like oil on water. Blues and greens and purples swirled in patterns that hurt to watch for too long. "Keep moving," Ben said to the others. "Don't stop here," but he stopped. He walked closer to the glowing thing. Heat came off it in waves. When he got within 10 feet, he understood what he was looking at. This was an egg. Something alive waited inside. Rita grabbed his arm. "Ben, we have to go. The tunnel might collapse, only you go," he said. "I'll catch up. That's crazy." "Leave it." Ben touched the surface of the egg. It was hot but did not burn him. The colors inside moved faster, responding to his touch. He felt something then. Not with his hands or his eyes. He felt it in his mind. Fear, loneliness, a desperate need to survive. The ceiling cracked. A chunk of rock the size of a transport vehicle fell 20 feet away. The group screamed and ran deeper into the tunnels. Rita pulled at Ben's jacket. "Please," she begged. "You'll die here." Ben looked at the egg. He thought about all the people he had failed to save in his long life. All the bodies he had left behind on battlefields. All the faces that haunted his sleep. This egg, whatever was inside it, was alive and alone and terrified. "Go," he told Rita. "That's an order." She stared at him like he had gone mad. Maybe he had. Then she turned and ran after the others. Ben wrapped his arms around the egg. It was heavy, maybe 200 pounds. He lifted it with a grunt. His back screamed at him. His knees threatened to give out. But he held on. More rocks fell. The entrance to the deeper tunnels collapsed. Ben was cut off now. He carried the egg to the far wall and sat down with it in his lap. The bombardment continued above. He could hear the Halian ships howling through the atmosphere. Each explosion made the ground jump. Ben had faced death many times. In the war against the Raytheon Empire, he had held a breach in a ship's hull for 6 hours while his crew escaped. In the border conflicts, he had walked through radioactive zones to rescue wounded soldiers. He had stared down the barrel of enemy weapons and kept walking forward. Fear was an old friend, but this was different. He was not trying to win a battle or complete a mission. He was simply refusing to let something helpless die alone. That felt right in a way that war never had. The egg pulsed with warmth. The colors inside moved in rhythm with his heartbeat. Ben talked to it softly, the way his mother had talked to him when he was a scared child during the Earth colony wars. "It's okay," he said. "I've got you. Whatever you are, wherever you came from, you're not alone now." The chamber grew hotter. Smoke filled the air. Ben closed his eyes and held the egg tighter. Above them, the Halian ships continued their work. They wanted to erase every trace of human life from this world. They would fail in at least one way. Ben Foster would make sure of that. 3 days passed in that sealed chamber. Ben had a water recycler in his emergency pack and some protein bars. Not much, but enough. The egg never cooled down. If anything, it grew warmer. On the 3rd day, it began to crack. Light split the darkness like a knife. Ben Foster jerked awake, his arms still wrapped around the egg. The cracks in its surface glowed bright blue, then white, then gold. Each crack spread further, creating a web of light across the crystalline shell. The heat intensified until Ben had to lean back, though he kept his hands on the egg's surface. A sound came from inside, not a chirp or a cry, but something deeper, a rumble that Ben felt in his chest. The egg shattered. Pieces flew outward but dissolved into sparks before hitting the ground. What emerged made Ben forget how to breathe. The creature was small, maybe the size of a large dog. Its body was covered in scales that looked like they were carved from gemstones. They shifted colors as it moved, going from deep red to bright orange to pure gold. 4 legs ended in claws that scraped against the stone floor. A long tail whipped back and forth, leaving small scorch marks where it touched. Wings, folded against its back, looked too large for its body, but the head was what held Ben's attention. The skull was elegant and fierce, with ridges above eyes that glowed like molten metal. A crest of crystalline spines ran from between its eyes down its neck. When it opened its mouth, Ben saw rows of sharp teeth and a tongue of blue flame. The creature looked at him. Their eyes met. Something happened that Ben could not explain with words. It was like a door opening in his mind. He felt the creature's emotions flooding into him. Hunger, confusion, fear, and underneath all of that a bone-deep loneliness that matched his own. Then the creature sent him images, not words, just pure meaning that appeared in his thoughts. He saw a world of crystal spires and rivers of lava. He saw massive creatures like this one filling the skies in organized formations. He saw a female of the species, larger and more magnificent than anything he could imagine, placing this egg in the rocks of Redstone. He saw her flying away, her body torn and bleeding, drawing enemy ships after her. A sacrifice to save her child. Ben understood. This was the last one, the last of its kind. "Hey there," Ben said softly. His voice was rough from 3 days without much water. "I'm Ben, I guess I'm your—" "Well, I don't know what I am, but I'm here." The creature tilted its head. It took a step closer, then another. It sniffed at Ben's hand. Then it did something unexpected. It curled up in his lap just like the egg had been. Its body was warm but no longer painfully hot. Ben felt the creature's rapid heartbeat against his legs. "Okay," Ben said, carefully placing a hand on its back. The scales were smooth and warm. "Okay, we'll figure this out." They stayed like that for an hour. Ben's mind gradually adjusted to the strange connection between them. It was not quite telepathy, more like feeling someone else's emotions as if they were your own. He learned that the creature was female. She was hungry and tired and overwhelmed by being alive. She found Ben's presence comforting because he was calm and steady. The bombardment had stopped. Ben heard no more explosions. Either the Halians thought everyone was dead, or they had moved on to other targets. He needed to find a way out and get both of them to safety. Ben stood slowly. The creature, he needed to call her something, stood with him. She came up to his waist now. Had she grown already? Ben looked closer. Yes, she was definitely bigger than when she first hatched. Her species must mature quickly. "We need food and water," Ben said. "And we need to find out if anyone else survived." The creature made a low sound, almost like a purr. She followed him as he explored the chamber. The main tunnel entrance was completely blocked. Tons of rock sealed them in. But these mines had many passages. Ben had worked here for 5 years. He knew some routes that others had forgotten. He found a narrow crack in the western wall. It led to an old access shaft that maintenance crews rarely used. The creature watched as Ben pulled away loose rocks. When the opening was large enough, he squeezed through. She followed easily, her body more flexible than it looked. The shaft led upward at a steep angle. Ben climbed for what felt like hours. His muscles ached. His lungs burned, but he kept going. The creature climbed behind him, her claws finding holds in the rock that Ben's hands missed. Several times she had to help him, using her snout to push him upward when he slipped. They emerged into an old mining station carved into the mountainside. Equipment sat covered in dust. This place had been abandoned years ago when the veins ran dry. Ben found emergency supplies in a locker. Food rations, water bottles, medical supplies, and a communication beacon. The creature was hungry. Ben opened a ration pack and offered it to her. She sniffed it and pulled back. Wrong type of food. Ben watched as she walked to a pile of ore samples near the workbench. She opened her mouth and breathed fire onto them. The rocks melted. She ate the molten metal like it was candy. "Of course," Ben said. You eat minerals. Your species probably evolved around volcanoes. He activated the communication beacon. It would take time for any rescue ship to reach them, if rescue ships were even coming. Ben sat down against the wall. The creature curled up beside him, her head resting on his leg. Through their connection, Ben felt her contentment. She had been alone in that egg for so long, aware but trapped. Now she was free and warm and safe. She trusted him completely. That trust terrified Ben more than any weapon ever had. He was responsible for the last living member of an ancient species. He had no idea how to handle that responsibility. Outside, the red sun of Redstone set below the mountains. The creature's scales glowed softly in the darkness, providing light. Ben closed his eyes and felt her peaceful breathing. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The rescue ship came on the 7th day. Ben heard its engines before he saw it, a deep thrumming that shook the air. He stepped out of the mining station with his hands raised. The creature stayed close to his side, her scales shifting to match the color of the rocks around them. She was nervous. Ben felt her fear through their connection. The ship landed in a clearing below the station. It was a military vessel, human-made, with scratches and blast marks on its hull. The boarding ramp lowered. 5 soldiers emerged, weapons ready. They stopped when they saw the creature. "Hold your fire!" their leader called out. She was a young woman with lieutenant bars on her uniform. Her name tag read Williams. "Sir, are you Ben Foster?" "I am," Ben said. "This colony still has survivors?" "Some. We found shelters on the northern continent. You're the only one from the eastern mines." Williams stared at the creature. "Sir, what is that?" "A survivor," Ben said simply. "Like me." The soldiers approached carefully. One of them, a kid who looked barely 20, raised his weapon. The creature hissed and smoke curled from her nostrils. Ben placed a hand on her neck. "Easy," he told her. Then to the soldiers, "She won't hurt you unless you threaten us." "Lower your weapons." Williams made a gesture. The soldiers obeyed, though they kept their hands near their weapons. She walked closer, her eyes never leaving the creature. "Sir, we have xenobiologists in the fleet who need to see this. We've never encountered a species like this before." "No," Ben said. "We stay together." "Sir, that's not your decision to make." "It is now." They stared at each other. Williams was military, used to giving orders and having them followed. But Ben had spent 30 years in service before he retired. He knew how to stand his ground. "We'll discuss this on the ship," Williams finally said. "But sir, you need to understand. News of this discovery will spread fast. Everyone will want to study that creature." "Her name is Nova," Ben said. He had not planned to say it. The name just came to him through their connection. It was what she wanted to be called. "And she's not a specimen. She's a person." The flight to the fleet took 3 hours. Ben and Nova stayed in the cargo hold. The creature was larger now, the size of a horse. Her growth was rapid and constant. She spent most of the flight eating metal components from spare parts. Ben tried to explain their connection to Williams, but words failed him. How could he describe feeling another being's emotions as clearly as his own? The fleet hung in orbit around Redstone. 30 ships of various sizes, most of them damaged. The Halian attack had hit 7 colonies simultaneously. Thousands were dead. The survivors needed transport to safer systems. Ben's ship docked with the flagship, a massive carrier called the Providence. Admiral Roth met them in the docking bay. He was an older man with gray hair and hard eyes. Behind him stood a crowd of people. Scientists, military officers, even some civilians who had heard rumors. They all stared at Nova. "Foster," the Admiral said. "That thing is coming with me to the research labs." "No, sir, she's not." "That's an order, veteran." "I don't take orders anymore, Admiral. I retired. And she stays with me," Nova growled, a deep sound that made everyone step back. Her scales turned dark red, the color of anger. Ben felt her rage building. Too many people, too much fear and hostility in the air. She was young and scared, and her instincts told her to defend herself and Ben. "Everyone back up," Ben said loudly. "Give her space." They did not move fast enough. Nova's mouth opened. Fire built in her throat, blue and white and hot enough to melt steel. Ben threw himself in front of her, blocking her line of sight to the crowd. "No," he said firmly. "Not here. Not them." She stopped. The fire faded. She looked at him with those molten eyes, and he felt her confusion. Why protect these people who wanted to separate them? Because we're better than that, Ben told her. We don't hurt people just because we're afraid. The Admiral's expression changed. He had seen something in that exchange that made him reconsider. Everyone out, he ordered. Except Foster and the creature. The bay emptied. Only Roth remained. He studied Nova carefully. It understands you, he said. She understands me, Ben corrected. And yes, we're connected somehow. Foster, do you have any idea what this is? No, sir. I do. Roth pulled out a datapad and showed Ben an image. It was an ancient carving thousands of years old. The carving showed creatures like Nova, dozens of them flying in formation. These are called Draconis. They were the first species to achieve space travel in this part of the galaxy. They kept peace between worlds for 10,000 years. Then they vanished. Every last one of them disappeared 5,000 years ago. Ben looked at Nova. She looked back. Through their connection, he felt her recognition. These were her people, her ancestors. Why did they disappear? Ben asked. No one knows. Some say they evolved beyond physical form. Others think they were destroyed by enemies. The galaxy fell into chaos after they left. Wars, territorial disputes, species fighting species. Everything we're dealing with now started because the Draconis were gone. And Nova is the last one. If what you're saying is true, yes. The Halians knew this. That's why they attacked Redstone. They were trying to destroy the egg before it hatched. They're afraid of what a living Draconis means. Ben felt sick. He had stumbled into something massive, something that affected entire civilizations. All he had wanted was to save one life. The Council will want to see her, Roth continued. The Galactic Coalition. Every species in known space will demand to examine her, to question her, to use her for their own purposes. Over my dead body. That can be arranged if you're not careful. Roth's voice was not threatening, just stating facts. Foster, you're in over your head. This creature represents power, political, military, historical. Species will go to war over her. Then I'll protect her from them too. Roth smiled for the first time. You're a stubborn fool, Foster. But you're the kind of fool the Draconis would have respected. There are old laws, ancient protocols from when the Draconis ruled. One of them states that anyone who saves a Draconis life becomes part of their flight. A sacred bond. If Nova accepts you as her guardian, the old laws might protect you both. Will she? Ben asked. You tell me. You're the one connected to her. Ben placed his hand on Nova's head. He felt her answer immediately. Yes, he was hers and she was his. Flight meant family. It meant loyalty beyond death. She would accept no other. We're a flight, Ben told Roth. Then may the stars help us all, the Admiral said. Because you just became the most important human in the galaxy. Station Tertius floated at the edge of neutral space, a massive structure built by 12 different species over 3 centuries. Ben Foster had never imagined he would see it in person. The station served as the home of the Coalition Council, the closest thing the galaxy had to a unified government. Now he walked its gleaming corridors with Nova at his side, surrounded by guards from 6 different worlds. The hearing chamber was enormous. Galleries rose in tiers on all sides, filled with representatives from hundreds of species. Some were humanoid. Others were so alien that Ben had trouble recognizing them as living beings. All of them stared at Nova with expressions ranging from wonder to fear to barely concealed greed. Nova had grown again during the 3-week journey to Tertius. She now stood 8 feet tall at the shoulder, her scales glittering like cut diamonds. Her wings could unfold to span 30 feet. When she moved with deadly grace. But Ben felt her nervousness through their bond. So many eyes, so much attention. It will be okay, he told her quietly. Stay calm. She pressed her head against his shoulder briefly. A gesture of trust. The council sat in a semicircle at the chamber's center. 12 beings, each representing a major power in galactic politics. The human counselor was a woman named Patricia Lane, stern-faced and calculating. Beside her sat the Halian representative, a being that looked like a cross between a mantis and a spider. Its name translated roughly as cutter of webs. The session began with Chancellor Voss, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms, calling the chamber to order. His voice echoed through translation systems. We are here to determine the fate of the Draconis survivor and the human who claims guardianship over her. Ben Foster approached. Ben walked to the center of the chamber. Nova followed, her claws clicking on the polished floor. Whispers filled the galleries. Foster, Voss said, you claim a flight bond with this creature. Explain. Ben had prepared for this. Admiral Roth had spent days coaching him on what to say and how to say it. But now, facing the council, he threw away the prepared speech. I found her egg during the attack on Redstone Colony, Ben said. She was alone and in danger. I stayed with her when I could have escaped. When she hatched, we connected. I don't understand the bond completely, but I know she's not a thing to be owned or studied. She's a person. She has thoughts and feelings. She deserves to choose her own path. Cutter of webs made a clicking sound. The translator turned it into words. The Draconis were tyrants. They enforced their will on peaceful species for millennia. This creature represents a return to that dark age. The Halian Empire demands she be destroyed for the safety of all. Voices erupted throughout the chamber. Some agreed. Others protested. Ben felt Nova's fear spike. He placed a hand on her neck. A new voice cut through the noise. The Draconis were not tyrants. An old being stood in the upper gallery. He looked like a turtle who had learned to walk upright. I am Scholar Grem of the Keeper Order. We maintain the ancient records. The Draconis were guardians. They prevented the strong from destroying the weak. When they vanished, we descended into constant warfare. Yes, they were powerful, but they used that power to protect, not to conquer. The Keeper Order lives in the past, Cutter of Webs responded. The galaxy has moved beyond needing guardians. We govern ourselves now. A Draconis represents chaos. My people remember the Draconis differently, another counselor said. She was Raytheon, with golden fur and sharp teeth. They saved my world from extinction when our sun began to die. They moved our entire planet to a new system. Without them, my species would not exist. The debate raged for hours. Ben stood silent, letting them argue. Nova remained calm, though he felt her growing anger at being discussed like she was not there. Finally, Chancellor Voss raised all four arms. Enough, we will hear from the Draconis herself. Can she speak? Ben looked at Nova. Through their bond, he felt her desire to try. She had been listening to all the translated voices. She was smart enough to understand the languages now. Nova opened her mouth. What came out was not fire, but sound. It was harsh and strange, like rocks grinding together. But the translator systems caught it. I am Nova. Her voice echoed through the chamber. The galleries fell silent. I choose Ben. Simple words. But they changed everything. She could speak. She could choose. That made her not just an animal or a relic. That made her a citizen under coalition law. The Halian representative stood. This proves nothing. She is young, easily manipulated. She should be placed under neutral care until she matures. And who decides what neutral means? Patricia Lane asked coldly. The species that tried to destroy her egg? I think not, arguments erupted again. Ben felt a headache building behind his eyes. This was getting nowhere. Then he felt something else through the bond. Danger. Nova sensed it before he did. Movement in the upper gallery. A figure in dark clothing raised a weapon. Ben did not think. He threw himself in front of Nova just as energy discharge filled the air. The blast hit him in the chest. Pain exploded through his body. He felt himself falling. Nova roared. The sound shook the entire chamber. Her wings spread wide. Fire erupted from her mouth, not aimed at anyone but straight up, a column of blue flame that reached the ceiling. The heat was immense. Alarms wailed. Sprinkler systems activated. The assassin tried to run. Nova was faster. She leaped 40 feet in a single bound, landing in the gallery. Her tail wrapped around the attacker, lifting him off the ground. She could have killed him with a thought. Instead, she held him, her eyes blazing, and growled a single word through the translator. No. She brought the assassin down to the council floor and dropped him at their feet. Then she turned to where Ben lay. Medical personnel were already surrounding him. The blast had been powerful, designed to penetrate armor. Ben's chest was burned, his breathing shallow. Nova pushed through the medics. She lowered her head until her snout touched Ben's face. He felt her terror through the bond. She was afraid of losing him. The one being in the entire galaxy who had chosen to protect her. Ben forced his eyes open. I'm okay, he managed to whisper. You did good, she made a sound like a whimper. Then she curled her body around him, creating a protective barrier between Ben and everyone else. Her scales glowed with heat. keeping him warm as his body went into shock. The medical team worked around her, not daring to move her. They stabilized Ben, sealed his wound with emergency gel, and gave him medication for the pain. Through it all, Nova did not move. She kept him safe. Chancellor Voss approached carefully. "Guardian Nova," he said, using her name for the first time. "Your bond with Ben Foster is acknowledged. Under ancient Draconis law, which supersedes all modern agreements, we recognize his custodianship. You will remain together." The assassin turned out to be a Halian operative. The council voted to censure the Halian Empire and fine them heavily. More importantly, they voted to give Nova legal status as a sentient citizen and Ben the right to speak for her until she came of age. Ben spent 3 days in medical recovery. Nova never left his side. She slept curled around his bed, waking instantly whenever he stirred. Through their bond, he felt her relief mixed with determination. She would protect him just as he had protected her. They were flight now, family. Nothing would break that bond. When Ben was released, they left Tertius together. The galaxy watched, some with hope, some with fear, but everyone understood that something had changed. The Draconis had returned, and they had chosen humanity as their allies. Ben watched the stars streak past the viewport as their small ship jumped through hyperspace. 3 months had passed since the council hearing. 3 months of running and hiding. The Halian Empire had ignored the council's ruling. They wanted Nova dead and were willing to start a war to make it happen. Their ship was called the Wanderer, a light freighter captained by a gruff human named Anders, who owed Ben a favor from the war years. The crew consisted of 5 people from 4 different species, all of them outcasts or rebels who had their own reasons to oppose the Halians. They had become Nova's extended flight, though most of them did not understand the concept. Nova herself had grown even larger. She now had to curl up tightly to fit in the cargo hold. Her intelligence had grown too. She spoke multiple languages fluently now and spent hours reading the ship's historical databases. She was learning about her own people, the Draconis who had ruled the stars so long ago. "Another ship on our tail," Anders called from the bridge. "Halian Hunter." "They're fast." Ben climbed up from the cargo hold. Nova followed, moving carefully through the narrow corridors. She could not fit on the bridge, so she stayed in the hall, her head poking through the doorway. The screen showed a sleek Halian vessel gaining on them. It was smaller than their ship, but heavily armed. These hunters had been tracking them for weeks, appearing every time Ben thought they had escaped. "We can't keep running," said Petra, their engineer. She was Raytheon, with golden fur that stood on end when she was stressed. "We're almost out of fuel and the hyperdrive needs repairs." "Then we fight," said Caney, their weapons officer. He was human, young, and eager for combat. "Against a hunter ship?" Anders laughed bitterly. "We're a freighter, kid. We'd last about 30 seconds. Ben felt Nova's presence in his mind. She was offering a solution. She could fight. She could fly in space for short periods using her fire for propulsion. She could destroy the hunter ship. "No," Ben said aloud. "Too dangerous." "What's too dangerous?" Anders asked. "Nova wants to go after them herself." The bridge went silent. Everyone turned to look at the dragon in the hallway. She stared back calmly, her eyes glowing. "She can survive in space?" Petra asked. "She thinks so." Her memories from her mother showed Draconis flying between planets without ships. "Even if she can," Ben continued, "I won't risk it. We'll find another way." Nova made a frustrated sound. Through their bond, Ben felt her argument. She was not a child anymore. She was powerful and fast. She could end this chase here and now. Why did he keep protecting her when she was capable of protecting herself? "Because that's what family does," Ben told her. "We protect each other." The hunter ship fired. Plasma bolts streaked past the Wanderer, close enough to make the shields flare. Anders cursed and threw the ship into evasive maneuvers. "They're hurting us," Petra said, checking her instruments. "There's an asteroid field ahead. They want to trap us there." "Give me another option," Anders demanded. "There isn't one." The Wanderer plunged into the asteroid field. Rocks the size of cities drifted through space, their surfaces pocked with craters. Anders navigated between them with skill born from decades of experience. The hunter ship followed, still firing. An explosion rocked the Wanderer. One of the engines went dark. "We're hit," Petra reported, losing power to the aft section. "We can't maintain this speed." The hunter ship closed in for the kill. Ben felt Nova's determination through their bond. She was not asking for permission anymore. She was telling him what she was going to do. "Wait," Ben started to say. Too late. Nova moved. She pushed past him, squeezed through the corridor, and reached the cargo bay. The emergency airlock stood there. She understood how it worked. She had watched the crew use it dozens of times. Nova, no! Ben ran after her. She looked back at him. Her eyes were gentle but firm. Then she spoke, her voice clear through the translation system. My turn to protect you. The airlock opened. Atmosphere rushed out. Nova leaped into space. Ben reached the window in time to see her spread her wings. She should have frozen instantly. The vacuum should have killed her. Instead, she ignited. Her entire body glowed like a star. Fire erupted from her mouth and wings, not burning her but propelling her forward. She flew through space like a comet, leaving a trail of light behind her. The hunter ship tried to turn. Nova was faster. She crashed into its hull with the force of a meteor. Metal screamed and tore. She ripped through the ship's armor with her claws, tearing apart weapon systems and engines. Then she breathed fire directly into the breach. The hunter ship exploded in a ball of expanding gas and debris. Nova flew back to the Wanderer. The crew had cycled the airlock and pressurized it again. She landed inside gracefully, folding her wings. Her scales were covered in frost that melted quickly. She looked at Ben and tilted her head as if to say, See, I told you I could do it. Ben wanted to be angry with her for taking such a risk. Instead, he started laughing. Relief and pride mixed together in his chest. She was not the helpless hatchling anymore. She had become something magnificent. You're a menace, he told her. She made a sound like a purr. But their relief was short-lived. Through their bond, Nova suddenly went rigid. She closed her eyes and Ben felt images flooding from her mind into his. A planet, crystal spires rising from oceans of lava, the Draconis homeworld, and something else, a feeling of presence. Other eggs, other Draconis sleeping and waiting. She knows where they came from, Ben said. Her people's homeworld. And there might be more eggs there. Anders whistled low. That's deep in uncharted space. The old maps call it the Burning Gulf. No one goes there. Too many dangers. The Halians will figure it out eventually, Petra said. If there are more eggs, they'll try to destroy them too. Ben looked at Nova. Is that where you want to go? She nodded. Through their bond, he felt her longing. She wanted to find her family, even if they were just eggs. She wanted to know if she was truly alone or if others might still exist. Then that's where we're going, Ben decided. The journey to the Burning Gulf took 2 weeks. They had to avoid Halian patrols and navigate through regions of space that were poorly mapped. Strange phenomena appeared on their sensors. Reality seemed to bend in places, making navigation difficult. Finally, they emerged in a system with a red giant star. One planet orbited close to the star, its surface glowing with volcanic activity. The Draconis homeworld. Even from orbit, Ben could see the ruins of an ancient civilization. Cities of crystal that caught the light and threw it back in rainbow patterns. But much of it was destroyed, shattered by weapons fire. What happened here? Caney asked quietly. Scholar Grem had told them the Draconis disappeared mysteriously. But this was no mystery. This was genocide. Someone had destroyed this world and its people deliberately. Nova keened, a sound of grief that made everyone on the ship flinch. Ben put his arms around her massive neck. Through their bond, he felt her pain. This had been a beautiful world once. Her people had lived here in peace for thousands of years. Then someone came and killed them all. We'll find the eggs, Ben promised her. If they're here, we'll save them. They took the ship down to the surface. The heat was intense, but the Wanderer's shields held. They landed near a structure that looked like a temple, its spires still intact despite the destruction around it. Nova led them inside. The temple was vast. The walls were carved with images of Draconis in flight, teaching and protecting other species. Ben saw humans in the carvings, primitive but recognizable. The Draconis had known about Earth even in ancient times. Deep in the temple, they found a chamber. 12 crystalline eggs sat in alcoves, each one glowing with inner light. Smaller than Nova's egg had been, but unmistakably the same species. They were in stasis, preserved by technology beyond human understanding. Nova approached them reverently. She touched each egg with her snout. Through their bond, Ben felt her joy mixed with sorrow, her siblings waiting to be born, but also a responsibility. She would have to protect them and teach them about a galaxy that had changed drastically since their parents' time. We need to take them, Ben said, before the Halians find this place. Then the alarms blared. Petra's voice came through the comm. Ben, we have incoming. A Halian battle fleet. At least 20 ships. They must have followed us. Ben looked at the eggs. There was no way to transport all of them quickly. But if they left them, the Halians would destroy them. He felt Nova's resolve crystallize. She would not lose her family. Not again. Get everyone back to the ship, Ben ordered. Prepare for emergency takeoff. What about you? Anders asked. Nova and I will buy you time. Get these eggs to safety. That's an order. The battle fleet emerged from hyperspace. The fight for the future of the Draconis was about to begin. 20 Halian warships descended on the Draconis homeworld like predators circling wounded prey. Ben Foster stood in the ruins of the ancient temple, watching the ships darken the red sky. Beside him, Nova prepared for battle. Her scales shifted to deep crimson, and smoke curled from her nostrils. Through their bond, Ben felt no fear from her, only determination. The Wanderer lifted off behind them, carrying the crew and the 12 precious eggs. They would run while Ben and Nova bought them time. It was suicide, but Ben had made peace with death long ago. At least this time his sacrifice meant something. It meant the Draconis would survive. The first ship opened fire. Plasma bolts rained down on the temple. Nova launched herself into the air, her wings creating a thunderous sound as they beat against the thin atmosphere. She was a blur of fire and fury, streaking toward the Halian vessels. Ben took cover in the temple entrance and activated his communication device. If he was going to die, he would do it loud enough for the galaxy to hear. This is Ben Foster, human veteran, to any ship receiving this signal. The Halian Empire is attempting genocide against the Draconis species. I am transmitting our coordinates. The galaxy should witness what happens here. Nova reached the first Halian ship. She was fully grown now, nearly 40 feet long from nose to tail. Her fire could melt starship hulls. She breathed a column of white-hot flame across the ship's port side. The metal glowed and buckled. The ship listed, trailing smoke, but there were 19 more. They opened fire on her. Nova twisted through the air, dodging most of the shots. A few struck her scales and bounced off harmlessly. She was tougher than any armor humans had ever developed. But even she had limits. A direct hit from multiple ships could bring her down. Ben watched her fight, unable to help. He was just a man with a rifle against warships. Useless. He had never felt more powerless. Then something changed in Nova. Ben felt it through their bond. She was not just fighting now. She was calling out, sending some kind of signal that he could not understand. It resonated through the air, through the ground, through space itself. In the temple behind him, the 12 eggs began to glow brighter. The Halian ships noticed it too. 3 of them broke formation and dove toward the fleeing Wanderer. They were going after the eggs. Ben raised his rifle, knowing it was pointless. Then the ground shook. The 12 eggs cracked open simultaneously. Light erupted from the temple, so bright that Ben had to shield his eyes. When he could see again, 12 Draconis stood in the ruins. They were small, newborn, but growing rapidly. He could see them expanding, their scales hardening, their wings unfurling. They looked at Ben, all 12 of them. And through his bond with Nova, he felt their recognition. He was flight. He was family. They accepted him instantly because Nova did. The newborn dragons launched themselves into the sky. They were clumsy at first, their wings uncertain, but instinct took over quickly. They formed up around Nova, creating a formation that Ben recognized from the ancient carvings. A flight in battle formation, 13 Draconis against 20 warships. The odds were still terrible, but something was happening to the dragons. The planet itself seemed to be feeding them energy. The volcanic vents erupted and rivers of lava flowed faster. The Draconis glowed brighter, growing larger by the second. Nova led the charge. The other 12 followed her lead, mimicking her movements. They swarmed the Halian ships like ancient fighter craft, but infinitely more deadly. Their fire was precise and devastating. One ship lost its weapons array. Another had its engines disabled. A third took a direct hit to its bridge and went dark. The Halians tried to retreat. Too late. The Draconis were faster and angrier. But Nova did something unexpected. She did not press the attack. Instead, she flew between the Halian ships and the fleeing ones, creating a barrier. She sent a message through the communication channels, her voice clear and commanding. Enough. Leave now. We do not seek your destruction, but harm us again and there will be no mercy. The Halian commander responded with defiance. You are abominations, relics that should have stayed dead. We will hunt every last one of you until your species is extinct. Nova's response was to gather all 12 of her siblings around her. They hovered in space, forming a sphere. Then they all breathed fire simultaneously, directing it inward. The flames met in the center and combined, creating a ball of energy so bright it looked like a small sun. Nova released it. The sphere, a fire shot forward, passing between two alien ships without touching them. It detonated in empty space behind the fleet. The explosion was massive. It did not harm the ships, but its message was clear. The Draconis could have destroyed the entire fleet with that attack. They chose not to. The Halian ships fled. Nova and her siblings returned to the planet. They landed around Ben, who found himself surrounded by 13 dragons, all of them looking at him with glowing eyes. The newborns were curious about this small human, who their sister valued so highly. Ben laughed. He could not help it. The absurdity of his situation hit him all at once. 3 months ago, he was a retired veteran living on a mining colony. Now he was standing in the ruins of an alien civilization, surrounded by the galaxy's most powerful beings, having just survived a battle with a war fleet. Nova lowered her head and gently bumped him. Through their bond, he felt her pride and relief. They had done it. The Draconis would survive. The Wanderer returned once the battle was over. Anders and the crew could not believe what they saw. 13 dragons, ranging from Nova's massive size to the newborns who were already as large as elephants. Over the next few days, more ships arrived. Ben's transmission had reached the Coalition. Observer vessels from multiple species came to witness the Draconis homeworld. News spread across the galaxy. The Draconis had returned, not as conquerors, but as defenders. The Coalition Council called for another assembly. This time Ben and all 13 Draconis attended. The chamber had to be modified to accommodate them. Nova spoke for her siblings, and her words reshaped galactic politics. She proposed a new role for the Draconis. Not rulers, but mediators. They would use their power to protect weaker species from aggression and to enforce the Coalition's peace treaties. But they would not govern. They would not impose their will. They would serve the galaxy, not rule it. The council debated for weeks. In the end, they agreed. The Draconis became official peacekeepers of the Coalition, and humans, because of Ben's bond with Nova, became their primary partners and translators. But Nova revealed one more secret. She had sensed other eggs while calling to her siblings. Not on the homeworld, but scattered across dozens of systems. Her mother and the other Draconis had hidden their eggs throughout the galaxy before dying. There might be hundreds more waiting to hatch. The search for the hidden eggs became a galactic project. Species that had been enemies worked together to locate and protect the eggs. Each one that hatched brought hope that the age of constant warfare might finally end. Ben Foster retired, for the second time, though this retirement looked very different from his first. He lived on the restored Draconis homeworld, which had been transformed into a school. Young dragons learned there, but so did members of other species. Humans, Rathians, even some Halians who had rejected their empire's genocidal policies. They learned to work together to understand each other, to build something better than what came before. Ben was old now, his body worn down by years of war and sacrifice. He moved slowly, with a cane to support his weight. But every morning, he would walk to the temple courtyard and sit on a stone bench that overlooked the valley. Nova would join him, curling her massive body around the bench. They would watch the sunrise together, comfortable in their silence. Other dragons came to him for advice. He became a bridge between species, explaining human nature to the Draconis and Draconis wisdom to humanity. His hair turned white and his hands shook, but his mind remained sharp. He told stories to the young dragons, teaching them about the galaxy's history and the mistakes that should not be repeated. One morning, 5 years after the battle at Maur, the homeworld, Ben sat on his bench and felt his heart flutter. Not pain, just a gentle recognition that his time was ending. Nova sensed it immediately through their bond. She made a low, mournful sound. "It's okay," Ben told her. "I'm not afraid." Other dragons gathered, dozens of them now. The eggs they had found across the galaxy had hatched. A new generation of Draconis filled the skies. They all came to honor the human who had started it all by refusing to abandon a single egg. Ben looked at them, at these magnificent creatures who represented hope for a better future. He thought about his long life, about all the wars he had fought and the people he had lost. He thought about finding Nova's egg in that collapsing tunnel and making the choice to stay. "I would do it again," he whispered. "Every time." Nova lowered her head until her snout touched his hand. Through their bond, he felt her love and gratitude. He had given her life and family. She had given him purpose and peace. They had saved each other. Ben closed his eyes. The last thing he felt was warmth and the presence of his flight around him. He died surrounded by dragons, an old soldier who had finally found his place among the stars. The galaxy mourned Ben Foster. Every species sent representatives to his funeral. They built a statue of him on the Draconis homeworld, showing a man holding an egg, protecting it from fire. Humans across every world told his story to their children. He became a symbol of what humanity could be at its best. Not conquerors or warriors, but guardians of the vulnerable. Nova lived for centuries after Ben's death as Draconis do. She never forgot him. Every dragon that hatched learned about Ben Foster as part of their education. The bond between Draconis and humanity grew stronger with each generation. Other species formed similar partnerships, inspired by what one old veteran and one young dragon had achieved together. The age of constant warfare did not end completely. Conflicts still erupted. Greed and fear still poisoned hearts. But the Draconis and their allies worked tirelessly to minimize the damage. They protected refugees, enforced treaties, and gave voice to species that had been silenced. And whenever a young dragon asked why they should care about being so much smaller and weaker than themselves, their teachers would tell them about Ben Foster. About the human who braved fire to protect an egg. About the veteran who chose compassion over survival. About the man who proved that the greatest power in the galaxy was not strength or weapons, but the willingness to protect those who could not protect themselves. The galaxy was stunned, not by war or conquest, but by the simple truth that love and sacrifice could reshape civilizations. Ben Foster's choice in that collapsing tunnel had changed everything. And in the end, that was the greatest victory any soldier could achieve.